Hello, I'm Gordon Day, Chair of IEEE's 2017 Global Public Policy Committee, and welcome to this second in a series of videos about IEEE's public policy activities. In the first, I explained that IEEE and professional organizations like it collaborate with policymakers because the actions of governments have as much to do with the advancement of technology as the discoveries of scientists and the creativity of engineers. I shared guidance from the IEEE Board of Directors for our work in public policy. I gave examples of public policy activities of interest to the Board and many of IEEE's organizational units. And I introduced you to the IEEE Global Public Policy Committee, which the Board established to advise the Board and to encourage, assist, coordinate, and oversee the many IEEE public policy activities. In this video, I'll tell you more about the committee and the communications tools that IEEE and its organizational units use to express their views on public policy. The committee, which we often call GPPC, is a committee of IEEE, appointed by and reporting to the IEEE Board of Directors. It has 7 members, a chair, and 6 members at large, who are recommended to the Board for 2-year terms through the usual IEEE nominations and appointments process. Members are expected to have relevant experience in public policy, preferably within IEEE. Geographic diversity is required. No more than 3 members at large may reside within regions 1 through 6, and no more than 1 member at large may reside in the same country in regions 7 through 10. Breadth of technical expertise and policy perspectives are also required. And to minimize the potential for organizational or regional conflict of interest, members of the Board of Directors and the governing boards of IEEE's major organizational units are not eligible. The committee is guided primarily by IEEE Policies Section 15, which we commonly call Policy 15. Policy 15 expands upon the committee's mission and charter and sets forth definitions and authorities. Anyone who wishes to work on public policy in IEEE should review Policy 15. Like most organizations that engage in public policy, IEEE uses 3 basic types of documents to communicate its views on public policy issues. In IEEE, we call them technology policy white papers, public policy position statements, and public policy communications. When our purpose is to educate or inform policymakers, we may produce what we call technology policy white papers. These documents provide policy-related information, often in substantial depth. They may compare and contrast options, but they do not present public policy recommendations. They are distinguished from other informative IEEE documents that may also be called white papers by the fact that they are intended, at least in part, for an audience of policymakers. When we have carefully considered policy options and want to make recommendations, when we want to say, do this, or stop doing that, or make a change, we may produce public policy position statements. Position statements may also serve to educate and inform, but they are distinguished from technology policy white papers by the inclusion of specific policy recommendations. We make our technology policy white papers and public policy position statements publicly available on the IEEE website for all to read. For some, we may issue press releases or call attention to them in some other way. Sometimes we're invited to engage in a public policy discussion, or sometimes we identify opportunities to engage. Our leaders may be invited to speak at policy-related events. Government agencies may ask us for advice, publicly or privately, or we may be invited to testify before or meet with a government body. And frequently, we contribute to a policy discussion by writing a letter to the policymakers involved. The documents that emerge from these activities are called public policy communications. Ideally, when the invitation arrives or the opportunity presents itself, we will have already considered the issues involved and produced a white paper or a position statement on the topic. When that's the case, it's usually easy to respond quickly with a policy communication. We already know what to say. But sometimes the opportunity or request is on a new topic, one that we've not yet considered, and on which we haven't yet produced a white paper or a position statement. And there may be only a brief opportunity to engage. This is not uncommon, and it can present serious challenges as we need time to consider the best response and submit it for the required review within IEEE. I'll speak more about these challenges in a later video. The situation becomes even more complicated when we recognize that, as I pointed out in the first video, what is good public policy in one place is not necessarily good public policy somewhere else. And sometimes policies that assist the advancement of one technology may impede the advancement of another. So let me return to the question of how to address viewpoints that differ by geography or technology. When it makes sense, IEEE speaks with one voice, expressing a message that has been approved by the IEEE Board of Directors, thereby becoming a definitive policy position for all of IEEE. When it doesn't make sense for IEEE to speak with one voice, or the issue is not global or technology neutral, Policy 15 allows organizational units to develop, approve, and disseminate their own public policy documents, provided that the organizational unit has an established position in the IEEE governance hierarchy, a duly constituted governing body, and an established internal procedure for policy development and approval. The Board of Directors recognizes that organizational units need a measure of discretion in developing recommendations appropriate for their respective domains. So, for organizational unit position statements, the Board of Directors limits its oversight to corporate interests, legal issues, and matters of process, coordination, and quality. So those are the three basic communications tools that we use to engage in public policy discussions. And each of them can be an IEEE document or an organizational unit document. I realize that this can be confusing, so perhaps this chart will help clarify the distinctions. The three types of policy documents that I described are listed down the left-hand side. Technology policy white papers provide information for policymakers. They do not provide recommendations. Public policy position statements provide carefully considered policy recommendations, along with background information that may be needed. Public policy communications supplement white papers and position statements as vehicles for communicating information and recommendations appropriate to a particular situation or audience. The IEEE Board of Directors uses these three tools to communicate with one voice information and recommendations that apply broadly. IEEE organizational units use these same three tools to communicate information and recommendations that apply within their own domains. The third column here provides additional information about how each of these documents is developed and approved. I'll discuss the processes in greater detail in the next video, and I'll also discuss the importance of keeping these documents, particularly white papers and position statements, up to date. The Global Public Policy Committee is the focal point for all of these activities. As I told you earlier, its mission is to advise the Board of Directors and to encourage, assist, coordinate, and oversee the many IEEE public policy activities. As far as I know, IEEE is the first of its peers to attempt to engage in public policy activities globally. It's not easy. We must do it carefully and well to establish and maintain our credibility and be effective. The committee is working to make engaging in public policy as easy as possible, to help rather than hinder, while assuring that we do it carefully and well. Before closing, I should make two more points. First, the things I have told you over the past few minutes do not apply to public policy-related communications of a legal nature, such as amicus curiae briefs and other advisory communications to judicial bodies. These documents are subject to a different set of IEEE policies, rules, and procedures, which you can find in IEEE Policy 7.9. Secondly, I want to be very clear that Policy 15 does not restrict IEEE members from engaging in policy activities as individuals. To the contrary, though members may not speak on behalf of IEEE without appropriate authority, Policy 15 encourages them as private citizens to engage in policy-related activities, including communications with government officials on their own behalf. In doing so, members may make use of approved IEEE and IEEE Organizational Unit white papers, position statements, and policy communications, so long as they make it clear that they are not personally representing IEEE. And while engaged in such activities, members may indicate their IEEE membership and volunteer status, for example, in a professional biography. That brings this video to a close. If you've not already done so, please visit the IEEE Global Public Policy website. That's globalpolicy.ieee.org. It's a portal into all of IEEE's public policy activities. You'll find policy news and all of IEEE's approved and currently active public policy position statements and white papers. In the resources section, you'll find links to the documents I've been discussing, IEEE Bylaw I-311, which provides high-level guidance for IEEE public policy activities, the Charter for the IEEE Global Public Policy Committee, and IEEE Policies Section 15, which guides the work of the committee. In the next video, the third, I'll dig further into IEEE's communications on public policy and how the Global Public Policy Committee supports their development and approval. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, send them to us at info-gppc@ieee.org. And please check out the third video.